guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinio Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. It is Friday, right? Happy Friday. We're going to be talking about the left wing / second striker position. It's a weird one because it could be a couple of different positions that are held by one person. So we're talking about a player that's not necessarily a complete nine, that could potentially play left wing, maybe even right wing and through the center, but it's a different profile than the players that we talked about yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, we spoke about Darwin Nunez, Victor Osimhen, and Tammy Abraham as the complete nine. And so now we're talking about that other player. And just to remind you guys one more time, on Monday, we're going to be talking about midfield. So we're going to get it all in. And some of you guys did ask for me to do another center forward one with Isak and some other players. So I will definitely get to that. Just to kind of start out, just in case you're like, so like what's happening? I am deep conditioning my hair like while I'm talking to you guys. And you know why? Like, I feel so comfortable with you guys that I can just like be myself and be like, hey, I need to like deep condition my hair because like I have things to do tomorrow. So you guys will accept me in my skin as I am. And yeah, so that's what's kind of going on in the situation here. Other than that, I am having a really good Friday, and I hope you guys are as well. I have my little bit of drink here. This is a little bit of Hennessy, you know what I'm saying? A little bit of Hennessy. So this should be fun. Am I muted, you guys? Can you guys hear me? Hold on. Hello? Yeah. You guys, let me know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? Say yes in the chat if you can hear me, because I think I just pressed mute on here. But yeah, okay. But now I'm okay. Audio's back. Okay, cool. So this is gonna be a fun one because I think that like this is where we can start dreaming a little bit. Some of the options that I've kind of outlined are a little bit more maybe dreams. You know, players that we probably won't get, but they're fun to talk about because they give us an idea of what the profile should look like. And then others are more realistic because the price point is a little bit lower and they're more accessible. So that's super important. Souls should join at some point. He said, give me like 5-10 minutes. He's taking like forever. I don't know where he's at. But when he comes in, he'll join it as well. Did you guys get a chance to watch some of our players play for their international teams or their national teams? Pepe scored a really nice goal against France. I saw Odegaard's goal against, what was it, Slovakia? I think it was Slovakia, one of those. Balogun scored a goal. And just to let you guys know, if you guys don't remember, the last international break that we had, I do think a lot of our players scored, like Thomas Partey scored, Saka scored, ESR scored, like a lot of our players scored goals. And lo and behold, they came back to Arsenal in that same form. And so hopefully that does translate over to Arsenal because we need goals, right? So yeah, I really did enjoy watching Pepe play against France. What I will say is that I do think, and Martinelli and Saliba both got their debuts, which was excellent. I mean, they're so young and they're doing their thing, and it's just I love to watch young players like have the like dreams come true and stuff like that. And so it was nice to see Saliba and Martinelli get their debuts as well. But watching Pepe, I do think that he was the most dangerous player for the Ivory Coast by a long way. Like he was very dangerous, and Theo Hernandez couldn't live with him. And I just thought to myself, Theo Hernandez is considered one of the best left backs in Serie A, mostly for his attacking, but like he's somebody that people look at and say, okay, he's probably one of the better left backs in Serie A. And the way Pepe was just dicing him up and making it really difficult for him. I was thinking he might really do well in that league. We just see that like when he's in the Premier League, it's not really the same, but that being said, something else to keep in mind that I probably wasn't thinking about the last time that Pepe played was the game state and the fact that he came in and we were holding on to a lead instead of chasing one. So, oh, Kieran Tierney also got it his goal as well for Scotland. But I do think like that plays a role. And if for some reason Saka was injured and Pepe started, I think we'd see a different Pepe than the Pepe that comes off of the bench, when we're holding on to a lead, because that's not really his bag, right? But he's such a dangerous player when he's on. I mean, he even scored that goal with his right. And that's kind of what we've been asking him to do for a while, is that he tends to be a little bit predictable because we know that he wants to cut in on his left. But this time they showed him to his left because they obviously knew that he's very left-footed, and he cut in on his right and got a goal. And I just thought, wow, I'd like to see more of that for Arsenal. But ultimately, it's just nice to see him in a good mood and scoring goals. Let's see. Mr. Bungle said, "What's cooking, people?" Daniel says, "Hello, Jess." Felix Zumba says, "As you look at the left forward striker, what about the right? Do you see Pepe here next season?" Personally, I do think that, because all of the players that came in at that time, we're going to need to make a decision on. And I think the two most interesting ones are going to be Saliba and Pepe. They both have like 2 years left on their deal, but Saliba has a 4+1, and I think Pepe just has a straight 5-year deal. And so we're coming up on 2 years this summer, 2 years left this summer. And I do think we have to make a decision whether or not, and he has to make a decision as well, because he's 27 years old. So the club and Pepe will probably need to make a decision on whether or not he's going to stay at Arsenal and we're going to extend his contract. I don't think we should let him run his deal down. We should try our hardest not to, because of the outlay that we put out there for him to come to Arsenal. So I do think like it's all up to it all depends on where we finish. I think if we finish in the Europa League spots, Pepe may stay and we use him in Europa League. And I don't know what happens after that. But if we make Champions League and we think that we can improve the attack a little bit more, maybe you do loan out Pepe, and try to start the process of moving him on, because the issue for that I think that we're going to have with moving Pepe on is that his wages are quite high, for the other leagues like the French league and the Italian league. And nobody really knows if he's a good player or not. He hasn't put together a string of performances where I think a team would be willing to take a punt on him for like 40 million right off of the bat. So they may need to see him in their team in order to kind of take that risk. And so I do think it depends kind of where we finish. Also, what are his goals? Like, is he comfortable with him and his family in London? Does he anticipate maybe like running his deal down and being okay with that? Because we know he has like 2 young children now. So there's a lot of different factors there. For me, I think I'd be okay with Nicola Pepe moving on this summer and us trying to look for something else in that right forward spot. But a lot of the players that we're going to be looking at today actually can play across the entire front line, which is kind of what I think we need, kind of like a Jota of sorts, somebody that can kind of just be dangerous from any part of the pitch. Let's see. Mo the First says, Jess, can we have an EPS for an episode for our loanee players and discuss who we should sell and who we should keep and how long we can get them, how much we can get for them? Of course, I'll definitely organize that as soon as possible. Orpheus says, still think Gabriel Jesus is the one. Relentless pressing, defensive work rate, can play striker out wide, can link play and run in behind. Gabriel Jesus is an interesting one. You guys know I love Gabriel Jesus. I just don't know if he would come to Arsenal. I don't know if we'd want to pay his wages, if he potentially wouldn't be starting every single game because he has quite high wages at Man City. And I think he ends up at Juventus. Matt G says, evening, Jess and chat. Make sure you guys have a little drinky drink if you do drink. Get you a little drink, get relaxed. This is going to be fun. Talking about transfers is always fun, and doing these scouting reports is always fun for me. So yeah, let's see. Captain Joka says Pepe ain't going nowhere. Deal with it. Okay. Fine. Ahmed says, I believe Pepe still has a lot to offer Arsenal, especially if we finish top four. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring Souls in. Hey, Souls, how's it going?
I'm very well. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So, um, I am excited for this one because yesterday's obviously was fun, but this is a position that I particularly am interested to see if we upgrade on it and if we can bring in a player of a lot of quality because I do think that not that the players that are playing there now in that left wing position are not good, of course. Like Martinelli is exceptional and Emil Smith Rowe is so talented. But as I kind of said yesterday, I think that this is a position that we could get somebody that kind of can play across the entire front line and can add some more goals. And it's just a natural forward where I think Martinelli or a natural wide forward. I do think Martinelli ends up being a center forward or like a number 9, and I think Emil Smith Rowe will eventually become some sort of midfielder, and I think if you bring in a player like this, they can move into those other positions and start building themselves in that vein. So, what do you think about that? Like in terms of because some people are going to say like, why do we need a left wing? We have Martinelli and ESR there, but it seems like a position where we've been linked with players that play in that position. So does that not kind of give you maybe vision into like what Arteta and the team is thinking in terms of what we need?
Yeah, no, I think with the Martinelli situation, you're bang on because if we think about his sort of period before his injury and his training for about a season, you've seen that he was looking to, and he was being trained as a centre forward or a striker, working on his finishing drills, and actually he had his first team training as normal, but then he'd also stay behind for an extra hour or two to work on his finishing drills, his dribbling, his sort of tight positioning, and his positioning in the box. So when you factor that in, they wouldn't work on it for about a season if they didn't believe that that's the position they're going to see him in or foresee him in anyway in the future. Obviously the situation we're in right now, he doesn't maybe come in, and it's a protection thing. Even when you talk to ex-players or when you talk to people who have been at a high level, they've said it's more for protection is why he's not played down the centre. As it is a physical, you're coming across centre backs that are probably twice the size of you, who are going to clamp you down. And when you've got an injury that Martinelli sustained, it's one of the worst things you can do is not give him that protection. So I do see him become a centre forward or a number 9, and obviously fulfill in that left wing. But that's kind of what Arteta likes, is the versatility attackers, or actually versatile players who can play multiple positions within their sort of area. So if you're an attacking player, can you play across the front 4 or the front 3? And that is what Martinelli is. So I do see them wanting to bring a natural winger in, because you can see what Saka's doing. He's a lone winger when Tomiyasu plays with no overlapping help. And obviously, with the role change of Odegaard, now he gets that support. But before, he was isolated on his own, expecting to do a lot of it on his own without the overlapping help of Tomiyasu. And obviously, Odegaard was a bit at the start of the season, he was in a weird position, and I feel like that's what they want to do on the left wing, is bring in someone who can be a touchline winger, who can also then implement with goals and play as an inside forward. Because you can see it, like Martinelli's positioning and stuff is still off a little bit. He's been phenomenal, but sometimes there's times where you think, yeah, he doesn't play like a winger. His decision making isn't of a winger, head down, running. It's more of a forward. And if you can get someone who looks up, that's why ESR sometimes looks better, because he looks up and he knows when the pass is on. And that's what a person who's meant to be a winger, that's what they're good at, is having their head up whilst running with the ball and etc. So this, even though it may seem like a minor thing, it's a major thing in these like tight situations where you've literally got a millisecond to make a choice. So yeah, I do think a winger, which one they prioritize, whether it's on the right or the left, I do think it's the left, just because we don't really have anything. We've got Pepe and Saka, who are both right wingers predominantly. And on the left hand side, we're making do, is why I think we're going for a left hand side winger more than a right hand side. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I look at it kind of like, well, we can't really replace right wing until Pepe is gone. So I feel like that position, like if we were going to go get a right winger, it would be addressed after he goes, where left wing can be somebody that is a backup striker or a false nine and can play in that position. It doesn't really disrupt things. You don't have to sell anybody to bring in a player like that, because naturally Nketiah and Lacazette are going to go. That opens up 2 spots for an attacker. Aubameyang is already gone, but right wing is a little bit more difficult, and I think it's also difficult in terms of Bukayo Saka being so prominent on that side. And who are we going to bring in that's going to be either willing to really knock Saka off of his perch or sit on the bench? It's a difficult one to fill.
But he's
So
a
that's
right winger. That's the other thing. He actually is a right winger, whereas with
yeah,
Martinelli isn't seen as that, and ESR is seen as a 10 or an 8.
yeah.
So their natural positions aren't left wing. So that's why we can buy, because we're filling a position rather than replacing.
Exactly. So we're going to actually start off with somebody that Jasper brought up. I like the idea of Nkunku could play anywhere really, but will he come? We can talk about that towards the end of the segment on Nkunku. So he did make his debut, I think, today for France. It was a
He
long
did.
time coming. I know that's a really difficult team to get in, but I do think, when you have somebody that comes from Paris Saint-Germain and then, is kind of just left by the wayside. Him and Moussa Diaby are 2 really good players coming through in the Bundesliga, early 20s, early to mid 20s, that came from Paris Saint-Germain and are now players that I feel like they could use, but because they kind of refuse to recruit within it's weird. It's like they don't recruit French players, and I feel like they should have a monopoly on those players. It's a weird thing. It's been a topic of conversation lately around PSG and why they don't try to be somewhat of a Bayern in the French league. But nevertheless, Nkunku is somebody that has really come along this season. Last season, he was really good, but this season, he's really come into his own. And he's a player I've always really liked. Obviously, we were linked with him quite heavily under Emery. That's one thing I can say about Emery, or that time period when Emery was here. The talent ID was spot on because we were linked with Party at that time. We're linked with Nkunku at that time. And Zaha, I think, would have been a better option than Nicola Pepe at that time. But we didn't get Nkunku. So we're going to start off with him. Obviously, he plays for RB Leipzig. And I wanted to ask you this question, like, would he be this player if he had come to Arsenal under Emery in 2019?
It's very difficult. I'd have to say no, just because we were in turmoil and we were kind of rebuilding our squad. I mean, we did have Özil in good form, should I say, and playing quite well. But then when you look at kind of the players we already had in Aubameyang and Lacazette, already there, and obviously Nkunku coming in, he might have been played differently to how he's being played now or utilized, and maybe he wouldn't have found his best position. So it's very difficult to answer, because leagues do make a player and break a player, maybe in his development, because even if you look at it, like this season, he's been phenomenal. His output exceeds his games played. But when you look at his 2021 season, he's had, let me just get it up, he's played 40 games, 7 goals, 11 assists. It's not overwhelming. It's not a great, return in terms of output alone. And then when you look at the season before, 19, 20, 44 games played, 5 goals, 16 assists. So again, it's a good improvement in terms of just his assist numbers. But then when you look at what he's become, would he do that in the Arsenal team? Like, we've seen signings come in and not do great, and even Aubameyang's decline has come. But if he had I think the kind of the way to answer is, if he had gotten all his players, like in Zaha, who else was there? Upamecano and
Thomas
Nkunku
Party.
and Thomas Partey, maybe, there's a strong, because like now when you look at Nkunku and bringing him into this setup, you can see exactly how he plays and how he can influence this team. But at that time, I feel there's a lot that was wrong with Arsenal. And I don't think he would have been the player he is, or he wouldn't have stood out as the player that he is, just because his development might have been kind of stunted because of everything else going around. I mean, the dressing room was lost. Would that have happened if we had got those recruits in? So it's a very 50-50 answer, but I mean, it's a guaranteed when you're at RB Leipzig, who do produce brilliant attacking players, under Nagelsmann, and then Jesse Marsch taking over, and obviously now he's gone over to Leeds, and they've been producing attacking players. Werner might not be looking half the player he is, but he was brilliant under them. He was a good, efficient striker when he was in the Bundesliga, and now you're looking at Nkunku. I don't think he would have been if he had come to Arsenal, just
No,
because of
yeah, I
the
don't think he
context
would
of.
have either. It's kind of similar to like, would Jadon Sancho be the player that he is if he had stayed at Man City? Maybe not, even though he would have been in a good environment, would he have gotten the playing time? And I do think the Bundesliga allows young players to really thrive without as much pressure. Because let's keep it 100. Everybody except for Bayern Munich is expected, like, Bayern Munich is the only team that has like a lot of pressure on it in terms of like, you need to be about to win the Champions League and you need to win the Bundesliga comfortably. And so when you're playing at RB Leipzig and there's not a lot of teams outside of your team that can make Champions League, it gives you more time to like develop as a young player. And it's taken him 2 or 3 seasons to get here, but he has arrived 100%. So I didn't put in the low current club thing because you guys, honestly, I was like, so like, I could not even finish this whole shit. Like when I was in school, I was so bad at homework, never finished my shit. Sorry. All right. So overview, 24 years old. He's like 5'9", French, obviously, from whatever that says in France, right-footed. Statistics, 26 goals this season in all competitions, 15 assists in 39 matches, and 2 yellow cards, 0 red cards. That is what you call output, ladies and gentlemen. Insane. And that's why he has tons of eyes on him. And I think with his career, it's gone perfectly because he is 24 years old and we're a little bit beyond the pandemic now in terms of financially can teams afford him. And not only can teams afford him, they're going to really want him. And he's 24, like he's in his early prime years as an attacker. And so I think he's played it so well at this point. And RB Leipzig has played it so well because they're going to get a big hunk of change from this player. So these are kind of his this is his heat map and then the positions that he tends to play. So his heat map obviously shows that he plays a lot in like left mid kind of area, some through the center, and then like left half space. I also think like this means that he takes a lot of corners. That's what it feels like to me. That's what that little red spot means. So he's somebody that takes a lot of the attacking burden on his back for RB Leipzig. And I do think he'd have more goals and more assists if the team was a little bit better. Nevertheless, he's doing a really good job and he does play in that position that we're kind of looking at. And what I found to be really interesting is the amount of goals that he scores from freaking everywhere. He scores goals everywhere that he plays. This says attacking midfield, which I assume is like his left wingish position where he kind of has a little bit of freedom. That's where the 13 goals and 6 assists have come from. But second striker, he has 6 goals and 4 assists. Left midfield, 1 goal and 2 assists. Right midfield, so off of the right, 3 goals and 1 assist, and center forward, which is the false 9 position that a lot of people like since he's been playing false 9 as of recent, people have been like, oh, well, what's going on? 2 goals and 1 assist. That's insane. That's insanity. Like he scores goals from anywhere that he plays. And it's not just 1 or 2. Like, I mean, he's doing the business. And I think Arsenal could use like a player like this, that can play in every single position. Right now, we have players that are young, kind of promising players, but he's a prime age player that can do it, and we don't really have anybody like that. So Sports Witness says that his current deal expires in 2024 and it does not include a release clause. A fee of at least 75 euros would be needed to take him away from Leipzig. So you are paying prime age, star-like money for this player, similar to Sancho. You know, I don't feel like RB Leipzig is out of control for asking for this kind of money for him. He is that good and he's a prime age player. So here more of his statistics. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, green bars mean you're fucking good. That's what this fucking means. On the left hand side, it's this is versus all the attacking mids and wingers, and I don't need to really sit here and really coach y'all through this. This says he's fucking good. And also against forwards, look at those attacking metrics like passes attempted, almost 40 passes attempted in the 92nd percentile, pass completion 80%, 93rd percentile, progressive passes 92nd percentile with about almost 4, progressive carries, which is I think one of his best qualities is him the way that he dribbles, almost 6 progressive carries per 90. It's insane. Progressive passes received 11, 97th percentile. So he is the fulcrum of their attack and what they're trying to do going forward. And I mean, he's insane. He's insane, right? So here's the question. Is there Bundesliga tax here? We've seen insane metrics from this guy, but just think back of the metrics that were, shouted out about Kai Havertz and Sancho before he got to the Premier League and Timo Werner. These are players that are very similar to Nkunku in terms of what they're doing in the Bundesliga. Is that something we have to take into consideration when we're looking at players from this league? Is that because maybe it's a little bit weaker, the attacking metrics can seem a lot bigger than what they actually are. And it could take them time to really get used to the Premier League, or like Timo Werner, they could flop right on their face.
Do you know what? It's like Aubameyang came in and hit the ground running. There's sometimes what happens is especially with Werner, he was misprofiled in my opinion. They thought of him as being this out-and-out striker. He's never been an out-and-out striker. He was always a secondary striker in a system. But even when you watch his games, he had 5-6 chances created before he scored 1 or 2. It wasn't ever, he had 1 or 2 chances and he took them. He was always sort of maybe at that sort of 30% conversion. He needed a good volume of chances to score goals. And that's why I was confused when people start saying, but he misses chances. It's like, did you watch him at RB Leipzig? He missed a lot of chances. So I think when you miss profile players, even Kai Havertz is another sort of centre forward, secondary striker, not like an out-and-out goal scorer. He's a number 10 type. He's not really this focal point to an attack, which is, for the numbers he had, they were insane, but you need to play him in the right way. And that's the thing. We're looking at Nkunku and looking at where he plays and where he plays effectively. And the only, like you said, high lines and stuff like that. Whereas with low blocks don't really exist in Bundesliga. So that's the only thing they'll have to overcome. But we're looking for a left-sided attacker. We're not misprofiling him. We're not bringing him in as a centre forward. We're bringing him in as a winger. And that's, for me, where the difference comes in. And then what you do is you look at other metrics. You look at, what requires you to be a Premier League level footballer. Technical ability's got to be high. Your footballing IQ's got to be of a decent level. And he's got that in bagfuls. His assist numbers are up there. He's got, 41 goal contributions in 39 games. He's got both
That's
goals
insane.
and assists in him. It's incredible. Look, there is Bundesliga tax, but even if you look at his Champions League numbers, he's got 6 games in the Champions League, 7 goals and 2 assists. He's returning more than a goal and assist in the Champions League. So even if you want to bring in Bundesliga into it, then you've got to bring in the Champions League, and he's doing phenomenally well in a team that shouldn't be doing this well in a Champions League. So that's the way I look at it. There's metrics you look for, and Werner and Kai Havertz, firstly, they were younger. They're like 20, and they're not 24. And also, Werner and Kai Havertz, not to dig them out, but they only had one phenomenal season before they made their big moves. Nkunku's been developing, and he's been a name for at least 2 to 3 seasons, where he's been learning his craft, he's been perfecting the game, and that's why I feel there's a bit of a difference when we look at certain players. Aubameyang was at the star of his career. That's why he came over. He knew what he needed to do, and he done that very effectively. So as long as you don't miss profile and start playing him in a position that's not really his, like if you start playing him on the right hand side, yeah, you can expect him to be another Werner and a Kai Havertz because you completely missed the profile there, and you've completely misjudged the play. Not to say he can't play on the right, but that's not really where he affects the game much. Like even if you look at his heat map, it's all left-sided. Even if he's played centre forward, attacking mid, it's a lot more heavy on the left-hand side than it is on the right. So when you look at that, as long as you're playing him on them areas, there's no reason why he should flop, especially with the time and space we're now creating for our attackers. So
Yeah. I think Blaze really hits it on the head. I think it will depend on how Nkunku will adapt to the Premier League games. Kai Havertz plays good right now because he's finally adapted his game at levels Premier League. So essentially, like, I think if the talent is there and it's true talent and it's not just a circumstance of, basically the way that I play, like Timo Werner, the way that I play is I can easily expose something that is not really there in the Premier League, like those high lines or whatever. But Kai Havertz has like pure talent. And so does Jadon Sancho. And so it was only a matter of time before they settled in. Obviously, for Kai Havertz, it took a lot longer than I think it will take Sancho. I think we're already starting to see some of Sancho's quality, but it can take, like, let's say half a season to a full season to really get a hold of the Premier League. But like, this guy, I think, comes into the Premier League and bangs. Like, I just don't see him flopping. Like, I can't see it because, like you said, he's 24, and this is not just, the Bundesliga teams play high lines and I just run him behind. This guy is freaking running the place. And I've even seen him play against Bayern, and he was good then too. So it's not like just he's just, the guy's fucking good. Like, I can't get over it. So with Nkunku, obviously there's pros and cons. He can play across the entire front line, which is one of the biggest pros I think he has. Is he's so adaptable. When we say he can do it all, like he's one of those types of guys. Like, he has high output, so you don't have to squint to see whether or not this guy would be able to put the ball in the back of the net for you. We need more players that can reliably score goals in that front line, and he would definitely do that. And he's ready for a big move. So he's somebody that you could get if you put the money down and he saw your project as a good one for him. But 75 million plus star wages is probably what it would take to get Nkunku. And so we're looking at star wages. It's like, what is that going to do to our wage bill? Can we do that? Can we make that happen? Can we give him upwards of 150 grand a week? Because I don't see him going to, because he's also linked with PSG and Man United. So those two teams will give him 200 grand a week. Would we be willing to do that? Will we be willing to get rid of Lacazette and give it to this guy? Is it worth it? It could be look at a con, or it could just be look like an obstacle, however you want to look at it. But I'm not sure that we're quite in that ball game just yet of buying a player like him and giving him like 200 grand a week, because that's what PSG and them would pay him. What do you think about that? Like, when you have a player like Christopher Nkunku, when you have players like Sancho and players like that are high output forwards, I mean, even like the players that he's similar to, Kingsley Coman, Mohamed Salah, Phil Foden, Sadio Mane, Leroy Sané, those are the players that he is similar to, and his outputs look very similar. Is that not the type of money that you would pay for a player like that? And is that not worth it for Arsenal at this point in our progression?
It's a tough one because we're at that sort of awkward stage, should we say, where we can't rely on just keeping our wage. Yeah, we can't let it explode the way that United do, where they start offering players £400,000 a week and £500,000 a week just because of the star name. that's a bit ludicrous. But I feel 200k isn't that bad. I know it sounds bad now because most of Saka's rumored to being 125,000 a week is the rumored contract that he's going to be getting at the end of the season or whenever that happens. So when you start to look at that, when we're trying to strip back, I feel we are at that stage, right? Even if we had signed Vlahovic, for example, we would have had to give him like 250, 200k a week. And it's that awkward stage. If we want to elevate the process, so if we want to elevate this team to becoming title challengers, and we believe Nkunku is that guy that can be the level raiser, then unfortunately, those players cost, firstly, in transfers, they cost a lot of money. All of our players that were linked to like Darwin Nunez, to Joao Felix, to Osimhen, to even Calvert-Lewin to a degree, he's still valued at about £50 million, and obviously the wages may be less, but you are going to be looking at that ballpark of 150 to 200,000 pounds. It is going to be the highest paid player. Like, unfortunately, It's just going to be that way because it's a level raiser. It's a guaranteed starter who's going to bring level raisers to the team, and they don't come cheap. And if you want an Nkunku and you believe in his talent, those players come with competition, from other big teams. Like, for example, whoever ends up getting Haaland and Mbappe will feel like they've got the worst end of the bargain because United are going in for him, City are going in for him, Chelsea, whoever else is there. So so I just think for me, you kind of have to do what you have to do at this point. We're no longer talking about signing, let's say, Martinelli on 200k or someone that's not really, like, Pepe was okay. Like, if we look at his stats in League On, they were all right. They weren't brilliant. They were okay. He's a decent player. Lacazette was a decent player. Like, he wasn't phenomenal. Like, he wasn't, oh my God, this guy is like the best thing to happen. And we were offering them 108k. That's what ruined us, really. But if you're giving it to like an Nkunku who's proven he's a top quality player, his output's there, the ability to play those positions there, sometimes you got to bite the bullet on one or two players. As long as you don't start getting 5-6 players on 200-300k a week, that's when it's a problem, not when you've got one or two players that are maybe on the higher side of their wages.
All right, so I have a question for you and the audience. So what if we could get Nkunku? He was interested in coming to Arsenal, and it would cost us 75 million plus to get him here and those wages. Would you bring in a player like that and then also bring in somebody like DCL, and that would be good enough for what we're trying to do? If Everton go down or they keep suffering the way that they do, you might be able to get DCL for less than 40 million, 40 and less. So knowing Arsenal, we're probably not going to spend 80 million on two players. I would love it. I love us to. But if we were to bring in somebody like Nkunku for almost 80 million, above whatever, would it be okay to get DCL as your number 9, your starting number 9?
Personally, I would actually do it. And I don't mind DCL. I know a lot of people have their opinions on him. Personally, I just think a lot of people who don't want him is a little bit. I do think it's a bit of recency bias and looking at him in a struggling Everton team with the big injury that he's had. But for me, in terms of, look, I'm a strong believer of profiles make players. And if you don't have the right profile, you can have all the ability, but, like, for example, if you bring the wrong profile, like Aubameyang wasn't the right player for Arsenal this season, and he struggled. Like, he didn't have anything, and granted, he didn't really want to be here, but the profile struggled as well. Our team, we were beating teams 1-0, like, and we were like, oh my God, we really tried hard to beat that team 1-0. Now we're comfortably beating teams or scoring 3 goals a game. So, and that's with Lacazette, a guy who can't score a goal. So when you start to look at, profiles, I do think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's a profile that can really elevate us, because we do cross the ball and do a lot of cutbacks, but we don't really have anyone to get to the end of them. And Calvert-Lewin's an aggressive striker who does try and get to the end of everything he can. So profile-wise, 100%, especially if they go down and we can get him for 30 million, because I do think if they go down, he's not going to demand a big fee because he's going to want to get out firstly because he's not going to want to play in the Championship, especially not at this stage of his career. So you could be looking at 30 million there and 75 million for Nkunku, and you've got two profiles that really suit what we need. So yeah, I'm all for it personally.
I don't know why you guys are so salty about this. Is it that bad? Is it really that bad to you guys?
I think it's a lot of recency bias. I'm not gonna.
I mean, is it that bad? I mean, you're getting Nkunku, who, if he is what we think he is, he could bring us. I mean, he could be a Mane-like player for us, a Salah type player like for us, that off the wing can give you maybe 20 goals a season, tons of assists, prime age. DCL is a player that can help you facilitate up top, just back to goal. A physical presence, could get his head on the ball from Tierney. Is it that bad? Because you guys, let's keep it 100. And I do want to just talk about this really quickly. Leonide says, if we can't afford Nkunku, why talk about Felix? One, content and fun and dreaming. If we can't do that, why are we here? But more than that, we don't actually know what we can afford, and we've actually been linked to Joao Felix. So that's why we're talking about him. Now, you may not be able to get Joao Felix and Nunez, and that's the scenario that I'm talking about here. In my wildest dreams, of course, I would prefer Nkunku plus Nunez, or Nunez plus Joao Felix, or something like that. But those players, I mean, that's almost 200 million by itself. And so if I'm being a little bit more conservative, I would say that this is something that you might see, that we go after a star left-sided left winger that can also play across the entire front line. And then you bring in a DCL, and maybe Nkunku starts through the middle sometimes. Maybe you have ESR on the left and Saka on the right, or you start Nkunku with DCL and Saka. There's different things that you can do. Nkunku on the left, Martinelli through the middle. I just don't think it's that bad, but I understand it's like, oh my gosh, DCL, but like, I'm talking about like a striker that you could get for 40, like under 40, so I don't know who else that is, but all the other
The
strikers.
only other one is Patrick Schick for me. But I don't know how much he would demand. Yeah, I don't know how much they'd demand though, because he's had a bit of a period where there's a hype built around him, especially after the Euros. So they might actually ask for a lot more than we're thinking. But yeah, that's the only other one off the top of my head.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you guys are like, no DCL. So okay, fine, we'll move on from it. I won't let you guys suffer any longer. So yeah, that was kind of the Nkunku thing. Just final thoughts on Nkunku. I know you guys really like him, but do you think that this is something that we should explore? Obviously, there are other clubs with a lot of resources that are in for him, but is this the type of player you would like to see Arsenal go after in a transfer window like this? And like, do you think that Champions League we have to have it? I do think with Nkunku, you have to have Champions League. I don't think we'll be able to touch him without it. Mbulo says Nkunku is overrated. He will flop in the Premier League. Mbulo, no! Mbulo, no, let me go back. Mbulo, do you see all these green bars? Do you see this? Do you see? Mbulo, 26 goals and 15 assists in one season, Mbulo. He ain't flopping. The only player that I can say categorically has flopped from the Bundesliga over the last 2-3 seasons has been Timo Werner. I think Kai Havertz over the last couple of months has kind of dug himself out of there, and we're starting to see the Kai Havertz that they bought. And we know Sancho is going to be just fine. He just happens to be at United. So I have a hard time believing that Nkunku will flop. You got to look at them green bars. Keto says Schick, and then Nikki says Schick is good.
Yeah, it's a very Marmite, isn't it?
Exactly. Blaze says, I would take Nkunku, but for DCL, I don't know, but we will see what will happen. You guys are lucky George isn't here because he's a huge advocate of DCL. So,
you know what it is? I'm telling you, his profile suits us to a T. That's what I think people have not realizing he's playing in an Everton team that no longer has James Rodriguez. When you look at his numbers under James Rodriguez, when he had creative output and players who can actually feed him the ball, he had insane output. His numbers were actually good for an Everton side. So that's why I'm confused to what the hate for 30 million is, because you've got Odegaard who needs a physical presence in front of him. Then you've got Saka who can drill that ball in. I think Tierney is the one who, is the most benefits the most from a DCL coming in.
All right, perfect. I love how this started out, you guys. Just so many different opinions. Tony says Nkunku nutmegs 44th percentile below average. Well, if we ain't got nutmegs on lock, then he can't come to the Emirates. You know what I'm saying? So let's move on to, this is going to be, if I have to settle and I'm not going to get my number one choice, this is the person I'm going for. Because if you haven't watched this guy play, you need to watch him play. This is Cody Gakpo from PSV Eindhoven. So Cody Gakpo is 22 years old. He's 6'2", Dutch international, right-footed. He has 16 goals and 15 assists in 37 matches, 3 yellow cards. And I guess this kind of leads me into the question about, do we need more height in our attack? When I watched Gakpo play, I thought, yeah, we don't have any of that. We don't have players in our front line that can give the center backs a difficult time. There are some center back pairings in the Premier League that tend to really just kind of do this to us, just kind of get out of here. And this is somebody that obviously, just like Nkunku, can play across the entire front line, but has the speed and the agility and the physicality for the Premier League. And I want to know what you think about that. Do we need some more height and physical presence in our front line, or do you think it's overrated and we can just do what we've been doing? What's your thoughts on that?
I definitely think we need it in the squad. Whether we need it in our first team is a bit debatable. But for me, like, we don't really have that. Like, I know people are going to get triggered when you hear the name, but Giroud, for example, we don't have a Giroud type within the team. Someone who can bring on as a plan B, or those low blocks, or those teams where you're really struggling to break the team down, and all you're doing is crossing the ball in. You do need a bit of height, especially when you're playing your Brightons, your Burnleys, your who else has got really, like, even Wolves to it. Their defense is quite tall. When you've got that, it's you're limiting your style, and it becomes very predictable because you're trying to play through them. And if you cross the ball in, they're just going to eat it up. But if you then bring in someone who's, I know this is going to trigger the chat again, but if you're bringing a Calvert-Lewin, for example, someone who can actually head a ball, it changes the dynamic of how you can attack and the different things you do. And also, I do believe it allows you to then play through the defense, because it's no longer a case of, do they cross it or they're going to cut it back? Oh, yes, we are going to do that, but we're also now going to play through you. So it confuses defenders. But if you've got one way of playing, it's very easy, because City suffer that sometimes because of the way they play. They don't play with like a striker, and none of their players other than Laporte and Diaz, or actually only them two, even Stones isn't that tall for a centre back. They're the only two, and you see it. Pep has to push one of them so forward when they're playing those teams that they're struggling to break down, just to get that height in attack. So it is useful to have in an emergency situation, in a plan B situation where you're really struggling in those games. So yeah, I do think it's a needed. It's up to you whether, because I'm just trying to think of who could come in that's got height but also give us everything else we need. So
Gakpo,
yeah, but
he can, because he's not like DCL in that way where he's literally just like a center forward, and he can do. Guy has agility, trickery, speed, directness. He can do a lot of different things, and kind of similar to what 6,000,007 is saying. He's a baller. He gives me Van Persie vibes, and I feel like he can move to being a striker. He is somebody that can play through the middle and off of the left, but he's not somebody that if you put him at center forward, you just have somebody to whack the ball up to head the ball in the back of the net. I mean, he's a typical Dutch player that has that skill and that footballing IQ and all those things that you really like about Dutch players and Dutch teams. He's definitely in that similar mold. And so yeah, I love this guy. Dublin Gunner says he has an excellent name. I'll give him that. Well, if you don't have a good name, we can't have you here. I mean, how are we going to make up nicknames for you? You know what I'm saying? So Football London says Arsenal are one of several clubs interested in signing Cody Gakpo this summer. He's rumored to be priced around 30 million to 42 million. Obviously, this is why I think that it's, if you can't get somebody like Nkunku, then maybe this would be a good option. Sports Witness, Arsenal are one of those known to be keen and on the market. There is a strong suspicion, whatever the fuck that means, that they would like to acquire him this summer. Dutch side will be more than open to a transfer if their asking price is met. So here's his heat map and his positions played. Very similar to Nkunku. It's very heavy on that left-hand side. I also want you guys to notice that he basically takes corners on both sides. So he takes pretty much all their corners. So he's a really good set piece taker. And yeah, this also shows him right here on the corner of the box. I feel like that's somewhere where he either likes to do his cutbacks or maybe heads the ball in from there. I'm not sure, but he does get in the box. He is somebody that's heavily on the left side. He does come all the way back here as well. So he's probably a part of build-up, somebody that you can rely upon on the ball. And I love that about him. When you look at his positions played, he doesn't have as many goals. Like, I mean, this is just in the Dutch league this season. He doesn't have as many goals from like every single place like Nkunku, so it's like not as insane. But he does play in multiple positions, so you can rely upon him across the front three. Just not as good as Nkunku, but they're obviously different caliber of players. So with Cody, the pros and cons for me is that he fits the profile of the project: young, up and coming, promising, can play multiple positions, all that jazz. He has physicality and size, which is something that I do think that we miss beyond Gabriel. I do think that we don't have enough combativeness and just players that if we're playing up against Matip and Virgil van Dijk, I just don't want to get swept aside. I want them to have a difficult time, of it. He has good output. Obviously, it's the Eredivisie, but he has some output. He can play across the front line, like I said, and the fee is good. Cons is the Eredivisie tax that'll inevitably come. But I mean, if you have Martinelli and ESR also playing those positions, you can get somebody like him and allow him to grow into that position. So thoughts on Cody Gakpo, people. If you guys have not watched him play, please do. Like, go watch a compilation. He's different than the players that we're usually linked to because he's not like small and cutesy. Like, he's different, and I like that about him. Souls, I'm not sure if you're like well versed on him or anything, but what do you think of just like the overall profile, the fee, and things like that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not one of those that likes to comment on plays I've not seen. I'll openly admit, I know I'm on social media and stuff, but yeah, I don't watch every league every day. But no, I've seen like little bits of him, not enough to make a good judgment. But yeah, he looks like a solid player, like a project. I mean, me and you, but one of my suggestions we'll get on to. They both seem like project players, and what I mean by that is they're still kind of raw and they need work doing on and kind of molding, and they're kind of at the beginning of kind of showing what they really are. And that's what I get like with when I see Gakpo. It would the only problem would be he wouldn't come in and just start straight away and be that player that we rely on. Like an Nkunku comes in and just plays, and he can come in straight away without really needing to be trained and taught and coached and have extra training sessions with. Whereas with Gapco and Sulamana, I'll just say the name for now. They're both project players where high ceilings, high potential. No one really knows what they can become because they're very unknown, but they're very good raw talents to work with. So if you're looking at sort of an option 2 or a B option, just someone to, because what we also need to realize is if the objective is to be met and we get European football, we're going to need someone like that. We're going to need them to play those group stage games that we no longer need. So, yeah, I'd say that's kind of the vibe I'm getting, is a good player who's got the quality but needs a bit of work on. But because well, fingers crossed, and hopefully we get some form of European competition, they'll have the opportunity to develop in those games, especially those mid games where we then on the weekend we've got to play a big game such as a United or a Liverpool, and we've got a Champions League game midweek. You can throw a Gakpo into that, or someone who needs a bit of molding, because they're less pressurized situation for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and he does have some European experience. I do think PSV was in the Champions League and then dropped down. So he has played there, and he did score I think 2 goals. Nikki Thompson says we have Nikki says we have a clever mobile playmaker who could really work well with him. Keto, we did speak about Osimhen, Tammy Abraham, and Darwin Nunez yesterday. So today we're kind of talking about, a different version of striker, not a complete 9, and then left wing / right wing, somebody that can play across the front line. So we kind of I've already touched on that. So that's why we're looking at these. This is the plus. We know we're going to get the complete 9, but what else can we get to fill out that front line, because we're going to lose 2 strikers. So that's kind of what we're doing today. Blake says Gakpo would be interesting signing because he's a tall guy, but he's very technically good, very clinical, play all front. But the only question is, how could he adapt to the Premier League, because it is the Dutch league. That's one thing about the Dutch players tend to struggle a little bit when they, as of lately, have struggled a little bit to get their feet going in the Premier League. So that is something to look at. 100%. Let's see. Thomas says Gakpo is a left winger. We have Martinelli and ESR as backup. We need a proper physical center forward like Darwin Nunez. Again, this is Darwin Nunez plus Cody Gakpo, Osimhen plus Cody Gakpo, that type of thing. EPL FA Cup says his profile does not suit us. Why is Laka playing without scoring goals? Because his contribution to the build-up is as good as anyone. Okay, fair enough. Jack says you need a balance of height, physicality in your squad, different strokes for different folks. I agree with that. I do think that if you come up and play against a Liverpool or teams that are a little bit bigger, you need players that are not just going to get pushed off the ball and just whatever, Lionide says Gakpo is interesting. I would say just take a look at him. Just take a look at him. Leld says, how am I supposed to take Eredivisie seriously when De Boer won it multiple times? Fair enough. Nashville says, don't know anything about him. That's why I'm just commenting on the language. I get you. Nikki says he certainly is interesting. Yeah. So mixed reviews, which I kind of figured, because a lot of people will not have seen him. And obviously we started off with Nkunku and then went down to somebody a little bit more raw. I'm totally okay with that. We're just giving ideas, but we have been linked with him. So just keep that in mind. Itamomo says, I've been screaming, we go for him. He's perfect. Yeah, he's just somebody I really like. And if you guys love Clive, he also backs him quite highly as well. So you know what I'm saying? If Clive says it's good and I say it's good, then it's probably good, right? Just joking, guys. Saswat says he was like the best player of that time. We were linked with him as well. So here we go. Cody Gakpo, we've done that. So now let's talk about Noah Lang. This is an interesting one because I have a question attached to this that's a little bit more important to me than just talking about who he is. But Noah Lang is somebody else we've been linked with. He plays for Club Bruges, 22 years old, 5'10". He's another one that plays left wing / attacking mid / 10 / everything. Dutch player that I think has only really played for the younger teams, right-footed. He has 6 goals and 12 assists in 29 matches with 6 yellow cards, and I think that says 1 red card. He's a little bit less outstanding than the other players, and what I will say about him is that I think he has the perfect profile, and he's a really good Dutch player coming from the Ajax academy. His progressive passes are very good. Progressive carries, dribble completed. He's a very tricky player. He reminds me a lot of Emile Smith-Rowe. I have to be honest. We've been linked with him, but I guess what I want to ask you guys is, I mean, you can kind of see he does the same things. He takes a lot of their free kicks. He plays on both sides. He's a tricky young player. They say he's like the young Neymar, but I don't do any of that shit. Neymar is like the only Neymar, and there's never going to be another one. Here's my question. I want to just go ahead and throw this out here. So he is a player that has had some personal issues and some attitude problems over the years. He said some not so great things about, I think, Jewish people not too long ago. And he's also been known to be a little bit testy when he doesn't get playing time. So what if the player has some attitude problems in the past, but they're really talented? Because we've built the culture and the culture is getting better, could we bring somebody like that in and just know that the culture is going to help them straighten out? Or do we have to stay away from players like this? Because if you never bring in a player that maybe has some a past, then we'll be cutting a lot of players off in terms of what we can be looking for. Souls, what do you think? And Tavares, Keto says Tavares was meant to have similar issues.
I think it depends on what that issue is or what the attitude problem is. If it's let's talk, if we're talking recently, let's say Aubameyang, if you're looking to sign him, it's probably fine because it's a bit of lateness. It's things that can actually improve. Like it's genuinely just a few disciplinary things that, if you play in, because sometimes players do it because they don't want to be where they are. So it's very difficult to gauge whether they're doing it because they've lost interest in the club, or have they lost interest in the project? Have they lost interest in kind of the direction? Like, for example, Conte to Inter Milan, I think that's fine. Like if you come out and say, I'm not being back, so I'm leaving, that's kind of fine. Those situations are fine. Like let's say you're a big player in a big club and the club has now turned around and said, we're no longer going to really invest in the club. We're not really looking to move it forward. And you're a player that's got the ability to win Premier Leagues or win, major trophies. And you've kind of had a bit of a scuffle. Like, for example, like even Dembele at Borussia Dortmund, his move to Barcelona, not coming to training, pushing the move. I think those things are somewhat okay because you're doing it for, in your opinion, for your own career, for a good reason. But when you come to, when you said a bit of anti-Semitism, I think that's the correct word.
Yeah.
When you say about like, Jewish people, for me, no, because there's certain things I'm not comfortable with.
There's a
And
line there, right? There's a
yeah.
difference between like Tavares being upset that he wasn't starting over Grimaldo versus those types of comments, right?
Like being like basically discriminative and racist, and especially when you're trying to build a culture. Like, I mean, look, I don't really know the situation really well. I don't know if he's apologized or if he genuinely means the apology, even if he has said it. But say, for example, you then bring players of that religion or background, or even if a player was racist and you bring a player like in Arsenal, we're a very, very diverse community. Like from the fan base to players, there's not really anything we don't have. We've got all sorts of religions, we've got all sorts of backgrounds and faiths and colours, and and just in the fan base as well, that everyone support. Like there isn't really like, oh, if you're Jewish you can't support Arsenal kind of thing. It's not the way it works. It's whoever wants to support the club can. So if you bring a player in that strongly said something about a certain thing, it doesn't bode well. Like it's gonna look a bit awkward. It's not gonna feel right, and it's gonna feel wrong to get behind a player like that. So when it's stuff like that, yes, 100% no. And also when like the Ivan Toney things that are going around, you might be bantering, you might just be like trying to brush it off. But when you dish your own club, especially a club that's basically made you as a player, without Brentford, like, would we really know who Tony is? Probably not. So for you to just be like, oh, no, we're interesting, or, F Brentford and all of this is, for me, there's certain things, it doesn't sit well. I know you're doing it, like, you probably don't care, but for me, it's just, there's certain things that don't sit right with me, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I think people have different lines as well, like, of like, well, if they're talented, who cares, you know? But for me, this is a player that when I watch him play, I just think you're really, really good, but you almost think you're too good and you think your shit don't stink. And you kind of need to go, you can't come to Arsenal like that. Like, you know what I mean? Arsenal's too big of a club. We have too much on the line and he's so talented. So I thought it was more interesting just to kind of talk about, that line now that we built the culture, now that there's a standard, could we bring somebody in like that? And if they do have some attitude problems from the past, what is acceptable? What is that line? And I think some of the comments that he's made definitely fall on the side of like, versus like Tavares, where it was just like a small little thing. You know what I mean? So, and have proven to not really be the truth and not the truth, but like I haven't seen that from him. This guy is a little bit more sulky, a little bit more like, oh, I want to force a move. And I do think we need to steer clear of that. So we will steer clear of him. But I just wanted to bring him up because we have been linked with him. And it may just be that we were scouting him, but I can't see us putting in a bid or anything like that. Not with what he's up to. Um, Let's see. Gail says, nah, no talent in the world can swipe that crap away. Let Chelsea have him. Polymation says players like Pogba and Richarlison would never play for this club. I
No,
guess
no,
that
but
means
that's what
like,
I said. That's fine. Like, because when you look at Pogba's situation, because we know that a lot better than I don't really know what Richarlison's done. But anyways, on the Pogba
yeah,
thing, Mourinho's took a dig at him and Pogba's taken a dig back. But you can see that there's something going on that's bigger than him being at United. I don't think that move was ever really something either party wanted, where it was an Adidas. Like, I've got it on very good authority that it was an Adidas incentivized move, and because Pogba's an Adidas star, they wanted him to come as part of their whole new brand reveal being Adidas. And I don't think anyone really wanted that move to happen, but it happened, and he's not happy there. But they can't really let him go because of big fees and demanding the amount of money that he wants. So they're different for me because United are in turmoil. They're not pushing to become, Premier League champions or Champions League winners. They're just kind of happy with where they are. They're recruiting wrong. They're not really invested in the club. So he knows he can win, a Champions League or a Premier League. He's won the World Cup. He's done a lot in his own like sort of career to show that he can actually go and push on for major honors. And he's not going to do that at United. For me, that's fine. But if you're pushing a move, let's say for example a City player comes out and starts going, "Nah, I ain't going to do anything," you're like, "No, you're going to legit win everything at Man City." Or like let's say an Arsenal, like for example Sanchez, when he pushed for a move, I was fine with the move or the pushing of the move when it was him going to Man City, because him going there guaranteed him a Premier League, honours medal. But then when he went to United, I was like, yeah, I'm glad you're gone, because that to me just reeked of you just wanting bare money and not really wanting to win anything. So there's two sides. An ambitious move from a club that's in turmoil is fine for me. I don't mind that too
yeah.
much.
Yeah, I think like we're talking about somebody that sulks, has a little bit of an attitude problem, has an ego, um, will kind of push back if he doesn't get playing time. And oh, he's made racist comments before. So he has kind of a multitude and layers of things that are not really in line with what we're looking for. And so I do think you kind of have to throw this one away. In terms of Rashford, we can still talk about him. I made the slides, but like I can easily just bring up his statistics and we can talk about Rashford as well. We have some more time. So it's fine. We can talk about Rashford. We're going to talk about Sulamana and Dembele as well after we talk about Joao Felix. So yeah, but Noah Lang is a no for me. I can't, especially after what I read. So yeah. And also Tyre, I do think, and I think you're a Liverpool fan. I don't think Rashford is good enough for us either. But we can talk about that in just a second. So let's get to Joao Felix. All right, so so this would be like my dream choice. Like if we had all the money in the world, I would say get Nunez and Joao Felix. But I don't know if we're going to be able to get both or if we could make it happen. But I love this guy. And I think this move can be a more expensive version of an Odegaard. Like, I think the thing about Odegaard is that all of this stuff happened. Like, he was in a place where he wasn't really being utilized, or he was in a place where he didn't feel needed and wanted and all that kind of stuff. But we were also able to get him for like super cheap. We could do this as well with Joao Felix, like in a place where he's not really happy, it's not really his jam, he doesn't feel wanted and needed, but like it costs 3 times more. But let's talk about it. All right, so Joao Felix, so the weird thing about Joao Felix is that the numbers don't really their numbers aren't really there. So I think that's something that really, like, he's at Atletico Madrid is something that people are like, well, where are the goals, right? But he's 22 years old, 5'11", Portuguese. He played for the Portuguese national team over this international break. He's from Viseu, Portugal. He's right-footed. He has 8 goals in like all competitions, 5 assists in all competitions, and 7 in 27 matches with 2 yellow cards and I think 1 red. I can't see because the thingy says slide. So, unlike Nkunku and Cody Gakpo, the numbers aren't hitting, but he's such a talented player. And he's another one that can kind of play off of the left wing and in center forward. He can do a lot of different things. This is from, okay, so you guys know that one, like, how am I gonna it's the guy, the TikTok, you know, I'm talking about
Oh, yeah, yeah.
TikTok. Okay, so this is him. I didn't even know that this was him. There's also like, I think it's either from Chris Wheatley, I think, where he actually tweeted about Arsenal's interest in Joao Felix. So I'm not just blowing smoke out of my ass, like, where there is interest. But this is from TikTok. He says Arsenal want him. Simeone, his objective is to change Felix for Guedes. So Guedes plays for Valencia. He's also a really good player. The problem is is that he costs 120 million euros, and getting that back is something that can only be done if he's sold to the Premier League. And so it's one of those things where it's like, oh, so that makes more sense. If they want to sell him and he's not happy, then they know they might have to take a loss. But the only way that you're going to get a lot of your money back is from the Premier League, because ain't nobody else got that type of money. So before we go to thoughts, I am going to go ahead and pull up some of his stuff. Give me 1 second. Chrome tab. Okay, so let's just go over his overview, right? So blah, blah, blah. Great young player. Look at those teeth. Nice and white. All right. So his main position is like second striker. He plays like false 9 type of position. He can also play left wing and center forward. You can see that there. And he has like 3 goals and 2 assists from the second striker position, which is right, kind of like below the other striker. And then from center forward, he has 3 goals and 1 assist. So he can score from different positions if that's something that we're really looking for. And where is his transfer to Atletico? It was the fee. It says $139 million. So that's like 120 or 110 or something like that, pounds or euros or whatever. It's a lot. Like, that's a lot from Benfica to Atletico Madrid. And it's weird because it feels like it hasn't really worked out, right? It feels like it's kind of stalled his progression. I remember when he first went to La Liga, people were really like, oh yeah, he's going to be the next best thing, he's going to be doing this, he's going to be doing that, and it hasn't really worked out that way. And so why do you think that is, Souls? Do you think it's because of the way Atletico play? Do you think he hasn't been motivated? You know, there's been like rumors of him being somebody that's a little bit maybe on the arrogant side, that doesn't work hard. So like, what do you think it is about Joao Felix that has kind of led him to this position where he's just not really, he hasn't really hit the ground running?
I mean, it's always a difficult one to to have a concrete answer with, but for me, it's the system, because when you play him in a system which is possession based with high volumes of attacks, you'll see his numbers. He is a highly, highly intelligent individual in terms of the way he can read the game and play the game. And when it comes to his laziness, I've not really seen it. I mean, obviously, Simeone plays in a deep block, which is harder for players to really work hard because you're not really pressing the same way. But when you look at what he can do and you look at his profile and you look at kind of where he fits in, give him the ball the way that we do. I've always said it, he's a Ballon d'Or worthy talent, and if utilized properly, the sky's the limit. Like, he's genuinely one of those once in a generational talent, and for me, he will come into the Premier League and bang for us, especially with the way that we play. Even if you look at Pep's system and the way that what he wants in that striker is Joao Felix. Like, if you listen to what Pep is saying about the kind of striker he wants, he is basically describing what Joao Felix actually is. And then when you look at Mikel Arteta and you listen to kind of somewhat of the profile he's looking at, they both describe Joao Felix to a T in terms of someone who can play deeper, bring the ball forward, technical in tight spaces. He can dribble in, he can get himself out of situation, and also his heading ability isn't actually terrible. It's actually quite good. He's an okay aerial threat considering he's like 5 foot something, and considering his height, he's very deceiving, should I say, when it comes to his aerial duels and aerial like sort of goals. And for me, it's just that Simeone's system doesn't really benefit attackers, and their attacking output probably looks a lot worse. Like, even look at Suarez.
Yeah.
Like, Suarez doesn't look half the player he did when he played for Barcelona, and that's the comparison right there. Like, when you look at Suarez, his output for Liverpool and Barcelona were around double what he's doing at Atletico. Granted, there's a bit of injuries and he's been missing a little bit, but even when you look at other examples of play, like Aguero, for example, when he left Atletico Madrid, his output in the Premier League was huge. Whereas under Atletico, it was okay, like it was a decent output number. So that's why I'm not looking at stats solely, because you've got to look at the system he plays, and the output numbers generally in Atletico aren't that great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I look at it and I think that when you look at Atletico and you've seen Joao Felix go there, the initial thing was like, all right, but like, how is he going to fit into that? We know how Simeone plays. We all know how he plays. And Felix just strikes me more of a free-flowing, attacking football type of player that really thrives in scenarios where you can kind of be free and come to the ball and make things happen on his own and connect with teammates. And we seen, like, for the goal that Atletico scored against Man United, he was integral to that. He didn't have the assist, but came in and he was more of a playmaker, which would lead him to be somebody more of like a false nine. And I don't think you can bring in Joao Felix without a complete nine as well. This is, again, the second option, the other option that you would bring in to do something different than what you would be doing with a Calvert-Lewin, with an Osimhen, with a Nunez. So keep that in mind. Polymation says there's no guarantee Felix would be a success in the Prem. He could be another Pepe. I do think that we have to give the scouting department more credit now than the one that did the recruitment for Pepe. So far, so good on players that didn't play in the Premier League that have come to Arsenal now. The difference is, in which I do agree with you, is in terms of the money, because it would cost a significant amount for Joao Felix, but I do kind of think that if Arteta and they do think that he's the right guy, that it might work out. But it would be somewhat of a risk because of the money. But if you're looking for him to be a complete nine, that's not really what he is, but he's that other option that you can have. And he can also play different positions. Saswat says that Joao Felix played half a season with a broken bone in his foot, a mismanagement by the Athletic medical team. While that is mad commendable, I do fear if we spend 120 million and get an injury-prone player. Yeah, that's something else that I do think you have to look at. But we know that Arteta, the transfer team, Edu would look at something like that. We wouldn't bring him in if we thought that he was going to be injury prone. Blaze says Joao Felix could fit perfectly into the Man City style of play, which is different than the way that we play. You know what I mean? Kingsley would say, simply put, Joao Felix is like Havertz of Chelsea. I actually think that that's a really good comp. Like the way that Kai Havertz plays as the false nine for Chelsea is kind of exactly how Joao Felix would play it. And I know as an Arsenal fan, because we're watching Lacazette play day in and day out and he's not scoring, it's like we need to bring in somebody who's going to get 20 goals a season. I don't actually think we need that. I do think we need somebody with a different profile that can hold the ball up, that can be a physical presence in the box. But do I think that player needs to have 20 goals in them? No, I don't. I think you could get away with even maybe half of that, because I still
10.
think that, yeah, in this system, Saka, Martinelli, whoever's playing out wide is going to be the guy scoring the majority of the goals. So I just think you need a different way. Like if you have Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or let's just use him as an example. If you have him up top, you can whack it up front. He can hold on to it. He can make sure the center backs have a difficult time. You can hoof balls into the box and have him head it. Or if you play with a Joao Felix, you can play into his feet, play the little 1-2s that Lacazette is doing, but he can also get into the box and make things happen. So you need both of those options. I don't think it's so much about, well, which one is going to give us 20 goals? I don't think we actually need that. What do you think? Do you think that our striker needs to get like 20 goals? Like, do we need to go back to the Aubameyang model? Because I think that that's a reason why we suffered, is because we had one person scoring a shit ton of goals and nobody else really was.
Yeah, I remember like Chelsea fans having this sort of weird thing before they bought Lukaku, where they were like, "Oh, no one's an out and out goal scorer. Like that's what I hate about Chelsea. All the goals are spread. We don't have this one play." And I was like, it actually benefits you more having multiple goal scorers, because if one drops off, the other will pick it up. Whereas if you're relying on an Aubameyang to get all, for example, in our case, we were relying on literally Aubameyang to get all our goals. If he stops performing, then what? But if you have a striker, yeah, the thing is, we need more output than what Lacazette's offering us. Yes, his assist numbers are brilliant. I think he's on, was it 8 or 9 assists this season? In that period of time, like in like the last 10 or 15 games or something. And then when you look at sort of, if we, my main debate is, if we had an extra 10 goals from our striker, where would we be? And I feel there's games where we need a striker. Like Liverpool, for example, we could have beat them in the first sort of 30 minutes if we had someone to put those chances away and utilize those crosses, like a Calvert-Lewin coming in, or someone who can be a Felix, who can be in the box and be aggressive even when you're doing those cutbacks. And that's kind of where my reasonings to why it's not really moving away from the Lacazette mold. It's just someone who can do what Lacazette does, plus get into the box in time. I just think we need like a young Lacazette, someone with legs, but can also do what Lacazette does. And that's the problem, because the problem is Lacazette sets it up, but then he's not quick enough, or he's not got the energy. I don't know which one it is, because there's times where he is in the box, but he seems to be gassed out, and that's why he's not scoring, because by the time he gets to the box and takes a shot, his legs are gone. Like, it's tired, he's heaving, he's probably just full of lactic acid, and he's just tired. That's why he can't get the power behind those shots. And that's what we need, is someone younger, fitter, but can do what Lacazette's doing.
Exactly. So these are just some of his statistics. I think when you look at this, what you can just kind of see is that what his strength really is creation. Passes attempted, he attempts about 32 passes per 90 in the 89th percentile. Pass completion almost 80% at the 87th percentile. Progressive passes, he tries about 3.2 of those in every 90. In the 91st percentile. Progressive carries, that is his strength, is carrying the ball forward. I think that that's important as well, as to have somebody that's reliable and can. One thing about Joao Felix is he gets fouled a lot, because he's very tricky on the ball, and he's somebody that they kind of have to knock over to take the ball from. So he has about 6.6 progressive carries in every 90, and that's in the 94th percentile. And then almost 1.5 dribbles completed in the 81st percentile. So he does a lot of the getting you up the pitch, connecting the play, playmaking from behind the striker. And that could work really well with somebody like a Martinelli. Having Joao Felix through the center and Martinelli playing still like a striker. Because when he plays left wing for us, he's basically playing like a striker anyway. So having somebody like Joao Felix also available to create for Martinelli could be a good partnership. But that's just me talking. You guys, I just really like this player. I know he'd be very expensive, but I just rate him so highly. Like I can't get over it. Like if we had an opportunity to get him, I'd just be like, come on now. And show you just his heat map, and then that'll be the end of that. But the first time I seen this, I was like, oh shit, that's terrible. But this is just for World Cup qualifiers. I was like, you ain't got no heat. You're heatless. So yeah, this is what his heat map pretty much looks like. Off of the left hand side, just like every player that we kind of have looked at today. A lot right in here. And then also a lot in the center circle, which is somewhere that Lacazette likes to live. He likes to live in the center circle. So you can tell that he's a big part of like build up and getting them up the pitch and stuff like that. So I think he would be a really good option. But I think the main question here with him is how much would you be willing to spend? You know, knowing that you still have to get another striker, a complete 9, how much would you be willing to spend on Joao Felix?
I'd say the cutoff for me would be about 100 million. Reason being, he's wanting to somewhat leave. They're looking to get rid of him. They know they're not going to get 120 million euros. Kind of alluded to, Simeone's comments and like kind of how he's spoken about the transfer going. They're probably looking at trying to recoup as much as they can. I think it comes down to how much competition there is for Felix in the summer, because City have got their eyes on Haaland. Obviously, Real Madrid need a strike, and they're going for Mbappe. That seems to be somewhat of a done deal. So two of your main competition are out. Man, if United go in for Felix, it'd be a madness, because I'd look at it and go, why? Like, in what world does he fit what you guys are doing? So it'd just be, and also it'd be a dumb move if he went in and actually went there. Not because I'm taking a dig at United, but just because of the players they have. It's just not the right time for him. So yeah, no, I think there's a lot of competition that he's probably not looked at. So yeah, I'd say around, I think 100 million will get the job done, and that's probably the most, because then the extra 20 million you're probably planning on spending, or the 30 million that you're looking at, you can go and get the DCL, or you can go get, a Patrick Schick. You can go get another player within that sort of budget for about 130 million. Because for me, the thing is, bottom line, I think for both strikers, if we're looking at two options, it's going to be around 130 million pounds to get them both in. So as long as we can get it within that price bracket, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, and just for I forget who said it, was it Nashville or no, like about Jonathan David. We will talk about him next week. It's just, I mean, you can't get everybody. It's so crazy because people are like, oh, well, what about Lautaro Martinez? It's like, well, damn, that's like a lot. Like, so
And it was 2 hours yesterday.
yeah, it was long, and like this one I know is going to go long too. So we will get to as many as we possibly can. I don't hate Jonathan David. I actually like Jonathan David. He's just not on this one. Blaze says, Jess, we can buy type of striker like Aguero. Aguero scored a lot of goals. He can play perfectly with Pep Guardiola's system. Do you think Joao Felix can be this type of striker? Yes, but I think if you're looking for somebody that's more similar to Aguero, you're looking at Lautaro Martinez. I think he's more similar to Aguero in that way, where I think he has more goals in him. I do think Joao Felix, he's more of a number 10 playing in that striker role. He's not, I don't think, maybe in the right system, yes. But is it an exact fit for Aguero? No, because Aguero was really aggressive. He was a little bit more combative. Joao Felix is a little bit more flair, if that makes sense. So yes and no. I would say that's about maybe like a 75% fit. Not not full on. But yeah, love the player. Would do anything to get him. Like, how much do we have to pay? How much do we have to pay? What do we have? Like, you know what I mean? I just think he's just so
That's the
good.
problem. What's our budget? Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a lot of the budget. And so we have to keep that in mind. Souls wanted to talk about Sulamana and Dembele. So I'll let you take the lead on Sulamana, and I'll bring up some of his statistics and stuff like that while you talk.
Yeah, no. So the reason why is it's more to do with as a secondary option. For me, I think when I've watched him, I've been very impressed. He fits the mold of a Martinelli that can actually play on the wing. If we're looking at kind of what we think, or when we talk about Martinelli playing as a left winger, Sulemana to me fits the profile of exactly what you hope Martinelli could do. And that's the reason why I've been thinking of, okay, this is the kind of player that I want. He causes a riot every single game I've seen him play. Recently, when he played PSG as well, he absolutely ran the show. Even though he plays in a Rennes side that's decent, it's not a brilliant side, but it is a decent side. But he is the star of the show. The only problem is, like I said with Cody Gakpo, he's another project player. He's only 20 years old. The only other issue that we may be coming across is the fact that he's only just signed for Rennes. So that's going to be another issue where I'm not even sure where his contract expires, actually. I think he's on a 4-year or 5-year deal. But yeah, no, for me, he's just that player who causes riots, just the same way Martinelli does, runs the channels well, but he holds the width a lot better. And when you think about some of the deficiencies within Martinelli as a winger in terms of not looking up when he can possibly have a cutback, that's not something which Sulemana struggles with. He's a technical player. He's skillful. He's got bags of skills in him. And the only other thing is, I don't think it'd cost a lot of money. I think it'd be similar regions to a Gakpo, but he's done it in League On. So that fills me with a bit of. I know people have their thing about League On tax and it's a farmers league and all of this, but I do think when you're playing in a very sort of lower end of that league, you can really show your potential. Yeah, it's a 5-year deal. Yeah, so that's the only problem with it. But as a profile, he's exactly what we need. But he's just too young. That's my only caveat, is that I will admit that yes, he's young. He's not really proven a lot yet. But in terms of just the way he plays, I feel he's made for Arteta to coach him. He just is like, when you look at Martinelli's improvements, I'm like, within a season, this guy would be absolutely incredible for what Martinelli's development is. And Martinelli's not a winger in my eyes. So if you've got a guy who actually is a winger, you'd have a Bukayo Saka on the left-hand side for me. Just someone who's technical, flary, can take on multiple people. He'd just be one of those where he's a Sadio Mane type where you also need to focus on him. You can't just be like, right, we can double team Saka, just let Sulemana do his thing. Because if you do that, he's gonna rip you a new one. So yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to talk about him. But yeah, it wouldn't be a first choice yet, because I just feel he's got a bit of developing to do. And Martinelli's probably a little bit ahead of him, but within a season or two, I'd just say Sulemana would just be better fit for that left wing position.
So you're going for more of like a traditional winger, where my choices were more of players that could play in multiple positions, and they're not all and out wingers, right? That's pretty
No, he
much
can
the
only play
difference.
left and right. Yeah, he can't. He's not.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, he's
Sulemana
not
is like
played down
a
the middle. Yeah, he's not played
yeah.
down the middle. That's the only. Yeah.
Nikki says fast, agile, good movement, and ball control. He is maybe a bit weak on strength and defensive part of the game, and he's just a young player, like, and that's just the key there. Is like all of them are kind of youngish, but Sulemana probably has the least amount of experience and probably needs more time. So we're looking at somebody that is probably going to be a really, really good left winger, but can probably only do that position, but needs some more time to cook. And that's fair enough. But I do think that that's a good shout. Something a little bit different than the players that we've kind of been looking at. George really likes him. I know that for sure. He really likes Sulamana. These are some of his stats. So what you can see is the bars that are the highest are the progressive carries and the dribbles completed, which speaks to his game. Like he's very much a take on one-on-one type. I wouldn't call him power and pace because he does have skill, but he's very much like a traditional winger, somebody that's going to beat you, get to the byline, and make something happen, right? You there?
Oh, sorry. I thought, yeah. So yeah, he's basically that. He's a very very traditional touchline winger, someone who's going to take on one or two players and then kind of look for a pass or a cross, and that's why I like him. Because the thing with Martinelli is he's an inside. He plays as very much as an inside forward, and the way that we're looking to move forward, I just feel he fits that mold, and he can stretch the pitch, and that allows more space, along the cross the front three really. And one of the things that we're struggling with is creating space for our right hand side, especially every time Saka gets the ball. One of the biggest things that we're noticing is two, and some teams even three players being on him. That's mainly because we don't have a central threat. But if you then get someone like a Sulamana who's stretching the wing on the other side and not coming, because Martinelli takes up a central role, and that kind of means that it's compact, it's not really being stretched, and your left back also becomes a centre back for your opposition. Whereas if you bring him in, your left back has to actually, the opposition left back has to play as a left back. You can't then tuck into the box because he leaves a gap in the team. So yeah, that's the reason why I like him. I mean, he's technical, like I said, he's skillful. He is a bit of well, he needs to build on his strength, but I feel that's with every young player. They eventually learn and bulk up naturally. It's never like even Rashford when he broke through was like very sort of skinny, player, and now he's a very bulked up player. It just happens. I feel they know that when they play men's football, they're like, crap, I need to bulk. I don't have a choice but to bulk up. Even with Saka, even though it's not a transformation, he's put on a bit of muscle from sort of his starting, when he played left back and stuff. So, yeah, no, I think that will happen. There is going to, obviously, with every young player, there's always a few things they need to develop and learn. And as they develop, they learn that. So, yeah, no, for me, he is that winger we're looking for and what we're hoping for Martinelli to be. But obviously, we know that Martin isn't a natural winger, and that's kind of why he has those little flaws in his game when he plays on the left.
So speaking of Rashford, since you brought him up, let's just touch on this really quick because earlier on in the show, somebody was like, well, why isn't Rashford on this list? First of all, I just don't think Man United will sell Rashford to us. Even though they don't want to admit it, we're literally their rivals and we are fighting for the same spots. And if we could get Rashford going, which I do think, like, if he played for Arteta, he could get something out of him. Like, that's not a bad player, right? They wouldn't sell him to us. I'm looking at his supposed value is almost 100 million. So he'd be very expensive coming from Man United as well. But he has a shit ton of goals. And he's been a good player for Man United. He's just going through a difficult period. What do you think the future holds for Marcus Rashford? Do you think he just needs to hold on until the new manager comes in, or do you think that there might be a need for a change of scenery? And do you see there being any chance of him coming to Arsenal?
I hate the hate he gets. I absolutely it annoys me because recently he's been very sort of not on it, but that United team is shit. It's hard for any young player to go and perform in that team. I'm not going to sit here. Like, you've got multiple managers coming in. You've got multiple different systems. You're uncertain of your future. It's similar to like kind of what Odegaard went through. Like, no matter what he did on his loan moves, Real Madrid just didn't want him. And when you look at players like that, when they're very unsettled, they don't really know what their future holds. And then on top of that, for everything that he's doing off the pitch, he's getting complete abuse for. People like, focus on your game, do this, which is fair enough. I know you're a footballer, then you can be an activist after. As long as you're performing, no one's going to care. But it's one of those where there's no love from the fans. Like, if we're looking at it completely honestly, I'm not saying every single United fan, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, when you look at social media as general, I know that's not really a barometer to judge fans on, but unfortunately, that's the world we live in. They are going to see these comments. They're going to see what people on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and that does affect your game. Like, even Pogba came out and said that he's had depression or he's had some like mental illnesses,
Yeah.
going through the abuse and stuff. It does affect him, and once you get to that point, you don't really perform because you don't. Football's a game where if you're happy and you're loving it, you will perform. But if the minute you stop loving the game, you stop performing. And I feel that's what Rashford's going through. Whether he holds on and the new manager coming in gives him that refound love for his game and for Manchester, obviously time will tell. But for me, it's not his ability or him as a player is not the reason I don't want him. I just feel we have a Rashford already, and who I'm talking to is Martinelli, someone who he plays very similar in terms of the way he plays. He's an inside forward, left hand side player who's actually meant to be a striker, but we've got Martinelli for that. So I just don't want another one. I don't need another one. I need a different profile because there's no point of overloading the same profile when we're trying to fix that profile or trying to get the right person to come in for that. It just doesn't make sense to bring in someone who's, at the same age, but it's going to cost you quite a lot of money. I mean, I didn't think it'd be 100. I thought because he wanted to leave, it'd be like 40, 50 million, which I would have been like,
I mean,
it's all right.
it probably would if they actually were willing to sell him, but like
Yeah.
that's his supposed value, is like 90 something million. I can't see
Not for
him in
that
an
much,
Arsenal
no.
kit. I can't see him playing at the Emirates except for as a Manchester United player. I think if he were to leave Man United, he would go to like PSG or something like that. I could not see him playing for another English side. Good player. I think we can do better than that. What are you guys speaking in here? What does this mean? What does this mean? You guys, what does this mean? You guys, I don't know what you guys mean. But yeah, so Rashford is a no. And then just to touch on Dembele before we get out of here. Dembele is a player that, I mean, you watch quite often because you're a Barcelona fan as well. And, there's been some reports, let's say reports that like we've spoken to him and maybe there's an opportunity for him to leave. But I look at somebody like Dembele and I'm just thinking, he's somebody that's still eating chicken nuggets and like expecting his bones not to fucking break when he's playing. He just doesn't seem very serious. And so he's getting unserious results. And he's just so freaking talented. But like, not only do I think he's kind of somebody that's very unserious, I also just cannot see him coming to Arsenal after literally Aubameyang saying that he did not like Arteta and they're literally best friends. But he's a very good player. I mean, do you think there's a chance of Dembele coming to Arsenal? Is that a player that you would like? I mean, he's more of a traditional winger, kind of like Sulamana in a way, versus like the Cody Gakpos and the Nkunkus. So what do you think about Dembele and chances of him potentially coming to Arsenal?
Yeah, so his situation at Barcelona, for people who maybe don't know, is that Laporta and Dembele don't really get on. Those relationships are being mended, obviously, with Xavi coming in and being a huge admirer of the player and wanting him to be a part of his sort of 11 and moving forward. So it's on the mend. I do think you'll end up signing a contract just because of Xavi coming in. But when you're looking at sort of the whole attitude thing, I feel this is where the culture of Barcelona was just shit anyway. Like under Bartomeu, the whole culture collapsed. The whole DNA and the philosophy and the way that Barcelona operated was just not the way Barcelona operated. It was a very, you've got Bartomeu trying to criticize, and tarnish the reputation of former legends in Puyol, current players in PK and Messi with the whole Mediagate scandal. And that's why I do think a lot of it's got to do with the culture. And this is where, the question that you asked about and Neil Lang, like, where do you draw the line? This is a player who I feel would suit a culture change and would come in, and he could potentially be that player who can be transformed with a good culture. Because if you look at Xavi coming in, he's changed a lot, similar to Arteta in terms of the way the culture is, the sort of how hard you have to work, the training times, discipline, and he has actually reacted quite well to it. He's picked up form tremendously in the past sort of, I say on the turn of the year, actually. So how many other games that's ended up being, even if you look at him in the El Clasico, it's like that was a phenomenal performance from him. Like, I know Aubameyang stole the headlights because of the 2 goals and all of that, but like if it wasn't for Dembele, they wouldn't have played the way they did. So for me, it's one of those where if the opportunity is there, I would 100. I know me and George are like the advocates that we need to get Dembele on a free. It's a no-brainer, but there's a reason behind it, because he is the odd, like, if you describe it, forget the name. If you were to describe an Arteta player, that is Ousmane Dembele. Double-footed, can play multiple positions. He also does actually work hard on the pitch. He's not a lazy player. He does do his defensive responsibilities. The way he can strike a ball is phenomenal. Like, if you see some of the ways that his shots, I'm like, damn, fam, you're going to break a keeper's hand one day. Like, if they even try and save one of these. He's got a good set piece on him. Highly intelligent. Like, his intelligence isn't something which I kind of doubt. The only problem is, like you said, his diet and stuff like that. But I feel with Xavi
he's
coming
somebody
in,
that needs to kind of be babied. Like, he needs somebody to kind of be like, okay, it's time to go to training.
They had to send him a personal chef. When he first joined Barcelona,
that's why I'm kind of like,
chef.
I get it. Like, I see, like, there's always this thing where it's like, well, he's in an environment that doesn't suit him. Maybe we could save him, if we just put him in this environment. I just think that, like, there's too many obstacles. And I do think footballers talk, and Aubameyang is probably like, no, don't go there. That's what I think. And if he were to come to England, I think he end up at Chelsea, because Tuchel is like his best coach ever, right? So, and they were talking to him in January as well, but he's an extremely talented player that just lets us down time and time again. Every single time that we see, oh, he's in the ambulance again. So, and I just can't get over him just walking up to McDonald's and asking for a Happy Meal. I can't take it. Like, I just don't think that he's so unserious. Like, it's insane. But tons of talent there. And like, if it was an alternate universe where we were fighting for titles and the team was already together and we weren't kind of like in this in-between state of still trying to build the culture and build the team, I would say, yeah, add Dembele as like an additional attacker. But because we're still kind of building the blocks, I just feel like, damn, take Pepe out and put him in. No, I'm not sure. Blaze asked the question. I think,
come on, over Pepe. Oh.
No, I think that he's a better player, but I'm just saying in terms of somebody that's going to be good for the culture and good for the project. I'm just beyond his talent. Like, we know that the talent is there. I can't see him. Justin Souls, if Dembele were to come to Arsenal in the summer, how will we add him to our starting 11 with Saka and Martinelli and ESR? You can answer that because he's your person.
Well, other than Saka, I don't think he'd come for the right-hand side. I think he'd come in for the left. He has played there, especially at the beginning of his Barca career. And actually, even under Xavi, like a few times, he has come over to the left. He can play both. Even he doesn't know what foot he is. That's how incredible both his feet are. Like, I remember a commentator asked him, you took the penalty with your right, but you're left-footed. He goes, did I? Like, he doesn't know. Like, that's how naturally gifted he is. So he can play either wing, and he can do it both very well. And so yeah, he can come in to be a cover, even to come on as a super, like an impact sub playing. Because what we need to realize is we're also in European competitions, and that's going to require a few rotations. You're not going to have Saka or Martin or especially not ESR right now. He's out of the England squad. Like, he keeps breaking down as well. So it's a bit annoying.
What's his
my
wages?
frustration. Oh, it's stupid, and his wages will probably be stupid.
Because you can't, like, here's the thing. It's like, you can't bring him in on
he's a free,
wages
so he'll
higher. Yeah. He'll be a starter for sure if he were to come in right on those types of
But
wages.
even then, like as a left wing starter, like if we're looking at Martinelli moving into sort of a 9 position, and then if you bring in like if ESR can transition into the 8, the only problem with ESR is his defensive responsibilities is a little bit lacking for that number 8 just now. I mean that will develop over time, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean you've got European competitions. You're not going to have these young players playing 3 games a week when we need them to. They're going to break down. So you need players of somewhat quality. And if we can get him on a free, yes, I understand. He'll probably come at like 200, 250,000 a week. But the good barometer will be is that let's see how he does from now till the summer because he's under Xavi, who's similar in terms of his discipline to an Arteta and the way he wants his coach. He's a very traditional boss, like culture first. Like if you F with my culture, like I'm gonna kick you out. Like, I'm gonna burn your house down, like that kind of thing. Like he is very strict. Like, no, he's probably worse than Arteta in that sense. Like he will not play you if you're not listening to him. So yeah, so we'll see how he does. I mean, this will be a good one to come back to in the summer to see if his discipline does sort out a bit under Xavi or not. So yeah, I'd say, but I like it.
In
I
a
mean, if he
better
sorts
in a
that
better
out,
space, let's see
yeah,
what he's like and how he progresses and stuff like that. Again,
because he's got no
believe in the
excuses then.
talent. I think he's so he's exceptional. Just wonder how that
Can I
would
just answer that
work.
Dublin Guna question? I mean, why would I want him out of Barcelona to come to Arsenal? Like, well, surely I'd be advocating for United to sign him if I really wanted him gone.
Yeah, for sure. So, um, before we get out of here, you guys, who is your choice for left forward slash or left wing center forward? We went over Nkunku, Cody Gakpo. Everybody said hell no to Noah Lang. We talked about Dembele, Sulamana. Who else? We talked about somebody else, Joao Felix. Let me know who your guys' choice would be. Obviously, we talked about traditional complete number 9s yesterday. If you guys didn't get a chance to watch that after this one. We talked about Tammy Abraham and Nunez and Osimhen there. But if you had to choose somebody to come in on that left-hand side or to be a different version of a center back, or a center forward, let me know now in the chat box. Souls, you had one more?
Yes, Serge Gnabry. I completely forgot.
Oh my gosh. I can't even entertain it because I'm just thinking he ain't coming to no fucking Arsenal right
Maybe
now.
not this summer, but I do feel like I do think we could get him. I don't know whether it'll be this summer or not, but he is the perfect one. I think proven, but and he's going to be free next season, so we'll see how much Bayern actually demand for him. But I don't know if he makes a move this summer and goes for the free instead. And if we've spoken to him, we probably are in the process of kind of saying to him, look, your contract's coming to an end. Take another year at Bayern and then we'll bring you in because he'll be 27, 28, which will be a perfect time to bring him in because we'll solidify at that point whether we're a Champions League team or not. And then to push for like the titles and the cups is when we need him in. So for me, or even if we bring him in this summer, but we can get him for, this is a pipe dream, but if we can get him for 50 million, that will be a good price for someone who definitely raises the bar and guarantees us a cup alongside everything else we're trying to do and solidify top 4. So yeah, like I think for me as an experience option, someone who's been there, done that, and to change the culture would be someone I would bring in because he's been there. He's a winner. He's won league titles. He's won the Champions League. He's won the Club World Cup. He's won multiple things. Like so, he knows what it feels like to be in that situation and in a team that demands success. Like Bayern not winning something is like suicidal. Like that can't happen. So he'll have that mentality and just having someone who can help Arteta implement that or like
Yeah.
help Arteta kind of. I don't think he needs that because he was at City, but like just for the players to look at and go, what do we do? Like this is the first time we're at this stage of a cup final. Like how do we overcome these nerves? Like from a player who's been there recently, it's different. They can trust him, that friendship kind of thing. So yeah, that's the reason why I would like him to come in, just because he kind of is the next step of project. So yeah.
Yeah, of course I'd love Gnabry back, of course. Liam says Gakpo surely. Ray says Holland break the bank. Don't know what Dublin's talking about here. Lionide says Nkunku by a mile. Nicholas says Nkunku or Nunez. Saswat says Charles de Ketelaere. I think that's how you kind of say it. For me, with Osimhen or Nunez as first choice. Nikki says Sulamana or Nkunku. Felix, if we had all the money in the world or could strike a bargain. Gail says Nkunku or Gabby. And Liam said Gnabry is flat material. Dublin says Gakpo seems most realistic and there's a cool name. So Joe go slow. Gnabry on a free. Blaze says yes, souls. I would take Serge or Nkunku as left wing. Yeah, so we have kind of like a plethora of answers here. Gnabry would be homegrown. Elliot says Gnabry, Joao Felix, and Nkunku would be my top three. Of course, the most expensive one. Dublin says it's fine. Sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about either. So yeah, I think if I have to be honest, if I had to be totally realistic, and I think that we would go after a really expensive center forward, somebody like Nunez that would cost us about 60 million. I think with having to get a midfielder and maybe something else, this position would not be able to be filled by somebody that's going to cost 80 million, 100 million, 70 million. So I would go Nunez plus maybe Gakpo. This is having been watched him and thinking he's very good and knowing that he can also play center forward and just feeling really comfortable with that choice and feeling like it's a very Arsenal thing to do. But I understand what you guys are saying about Gnabry. Also, you could look to bring in Gnabry as well because I don't think he always plays on the left. I think he plays on the right mostly. Does he not? So he could also
Yeah, because they
replace
got Sani on the left. Yeah.
Yeah, he can replace Pepe the next year on a free. That's kind of what I would when we solidified ourselves in Champions League. So yeah, that's kind of what I would go with. Dominique, thank you so much for your super chat. Dominique says, I don't know, the YouTube highlights got me, but Darwin Nunez would be awesome, but Holland would be bonkers. Yeah, it would be if we could get that done. And T Cal says Nunez and Gnabry. So let's go ahead and get out of here. This was like literally a minute away from being 2 hours, but I do enjoy doing these with you guys. We'll be back on Monday. If something happens over the weekend, obviously I'll come on in the weekend. But as of now, it's just going to be Monday. We'll talk about midfield. So we're going to be talking about Houssam Aouar, Jude Bellingham, Matthias Nunez, Fabian Ruiz, and Renato Sanchez as that left-sided midfielder. So similar to what we've done today, but with midfielders. So if you have other people that you want us to like look at, you know where to find me at SheKnowsArsenal and Jacinho Tweets on Twitter. You can just tweet me or DM me or whatever, and I'll look at it. Or you can comment here, and I'll look at it there as well. Make sure that you guys follow Souls at Gooner Souls on Twitter. And we will be back with more content on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And if I don't see you guys on Monday, how rude. How rude. Why wouldn't you be here on Monday? Be here on Monday. Okay. Talk to you guys soon.